In this week's Training Focus, we're going to talk about some scene differences between an autoerotic fatality and a suicide. So have you ever worked an autoerotic fatality? Have you ever worked a death that you know was an autoerotic death and not a suicide? And if so, what are some of the scene features and what are some of the things that set you onto that track? And I think one of the first places we need to start is looking at the definitions. So the definition of a suicide, and this is between all the agencies and organizations that have the responsibility of setting definitions, and this is in the simplest form, the act or instance of taking one's own life voluntarily and intentionally, especially by a person of years of discretion and of sound mind. Now, to break that down, basically that means that someone has taken their life voluntarily. They did this act, and the purpose of doing this act was to end their life, and their goal was to end their life, and it was intentional. That is suicide. Now, there's a stark difference between that and autoerotic fatalities. So if we look at the definition of an autoerotic fatality, autoerotic deaths are accidental death that occur during solitary sexual activity in which some type of apparatus that was used to enhance the sexual stimulation of the deceased caused the unintentional death. So let's break that definition down. In suicide, they done a voluntary act to intentionally end their life. In an autoerotic fatality death, they are accidental death, which means the person didn't mean to die. That wasn't what they intended to do. And it's during a solitary sexual activity. So if two people are involved in something sexual and during their sexual play, someone dies from that play, that still may be an accident, but it's not an autoerotic fatality accident. Those have to be solitary. Some type of apparatus that was used to enhance sexual stimulation caused the unintentional death. So, an apparatus to enhance sexual stimulation, we might think of ligature strangulation. So, maybe there's a ligature around their neck and they're using that to create a hypoxic effect, and they passed out and ended up dying because the ligature was still around their neck and the pressure occluded the arteries. But it could also be from electrical stimulation. It could be from inert gas. It could be from putting a gas mask on your face with cotton balls soaked in ether. And then, you get to where you're almost passing out, and then you raise the gas mask up and you get some good oxygen. That's still oxygen depletion. Electrocution, as I said, it could be, the amperage is what kills you. So it could be some low voltage stimulation, and somehow that caught ground, increased amperage, and the person died. It can be insertion of items. If you're inserting things in any orifice of your body and that causes some type of damage that leads to death, then that item caused the unintentional death. So all of us that's been around for a while have heard about poor Aunt Jemima ending up in the shower, and some poor feller slips in the shower and falls on Aunt Jemima. And so he has to go to the emergency room, and poor Aunt Jemima has to be extricated from his keister. Now, I've never kept syrup in my shower, so I'm not sure why Aunt Jemima is doing in there, and showers are supposed to be private, so she does not need to be in there when this fella is showering. However, poor guy slipped and fell, and there's Aunt Jemima. But let's say that when he slipped and fell, Aunt Jemima, or whatever other item that he ended up slipping over, caused damage, and he died from it. That could be considered an autoerotic accident because the item that was used to cause sexual stimulation, Aunt Jemima, ended up causing the unintentional death. So it is not just ligature strangulation. So when we approach these scenes, and one of the first things we have to do is decide, is this sexual in nature or is just simply suicide? The sexual component to it is important when it comes to an autoerotic accident. If there's no sexual component, then we wouldn't be considering it as autoerotic. But there are 15, I've narrowed it down to 15, there's probably more, but the 15 most common scene features at an autoerotic fatality that in most cases will not appear in a suicide. Now, there could be one or two crossover features, but when you start seeing these things in a scene, then your mind can start looking more towards autoerotic than suicide. Number one is nudity. I think I've only worked one suicide in my career that the person was completely nude, and we ruled it suicide. But of course, that was a gunshot to the head, and we certainly could not think that gunshot to the head was going to cause any type of sexual pleasure. And so why they were nude, we don't really know, but the autoerotic wasn't even considered because there was no real sexual component. So nudity is one. Exposed genitals. That could be that they got their shirt on but no pants, or it could be that the breeches or shorts are down around their ankles, but there's exposed genitals. Cross-dressing. Now, don't think transgendered. Don't think that someone is living a lifestyle as male living female, female living male, transgender that we're dealing with in today's society. That's not what I'm talking about. More so in a male than a female. If a male that lives like a male, identifies like a male, dresses like a male, if during sexual play he wears women's clothing or women's like underwear, nighties and high heels, bras, that is generally a sexual component. If a woman wears a male boxer shorts and a t-shirt to bed as pajamas, that's generally not considered a sexual component to it. But if a man puts on, lacy nighties and women's underwear and things like that, then it's generally not transgenderism. It's generally considered having a sexual component of some kind. Now, that's a broad brush, but not too broad, really. So, but if you see someone in a maybe ligature strangulation or maybe in some other way that have died that has wearing women's clothing, and they don't normally wear women's clothing, you might start considering a sexual component. Evidence of masturbation activity. Now, sometimes you may see that in whether it be insertions or whether it be lubes or whether and other things we're going to talk about, male or female. But sometimes with males, especially if they've been doing this activity for a while, they can actually climax without any manual stimulation, especially with electrocution and ligature strangulation. So if someone has been participating in ligature strangulation long enough, they are addicted to the hypoxia, and they can actually ejaculate without any manual stimulation. So you might see the person fully dressed and hanging from a ligature, and you would automatically think, oh, that's suicide but what else do you see in the scene? And we'll get into some of those other items in a moment. So nudity, exposed genitals, cross-dressing, evidence of masturbation, foreign body insertion into the anus or the penis. So that's something else that is common in autoerotic situations. Something has maybe, I know of a case where someone was inserting things into their penis, it got away from them, ended up in the bladder, and it got infected, they went sepsis, and they died. And all that was attributed to sexual play. In a scene, you might see lubricants that looks as though it was involved in this death. It's not that, over there in the nightstand, there was a bottle of lubricant. No. Is it there with the person? Has it been used in this situation? Pornography, whether that be printed material or movies, their phone that's on some type of pornography that's in the scene. Most people that is going to commit suicide won't be watching a pornography movie while they're doing it. Maybe, but again, we would be thinking more autoerotic. A mirror or videotaping. Now, some people die by suicide in front of a mirror because there's a mirror in the bedroom, there's a mirror in the bathroom, there just happens to be a mirror there. But if there's a mirror there and other things like exposed genitals, cross-dressing, lubricants, pornography, or anything like that, then the mirror may have added to this because they want to watch some of that sexual play. Video recording. There are many cases out there where people have recorded themselves dying by suicide. When that recording is available, you obviously can tell the difference between dying by suicide and autoerotic, or vice versa. So if there's a video recorder there, certainly that's good evidence. Covering their face with a mask or with duct tape or with pantyhose. If someone is covering their face, then especially with a mirror or video camera around, then they're disguising their own identity, and some of the sexual play that they're doing can be watched and or recorded and watched later, and they are taking their identity out of it so they can use it for other play at a later time. You may see bondage of the genitals. Obviously, this is a male thing, but they have used ropes or small chains or maybe big chains, if that fits you, or some other type of rubber bands or items to bondage up your genitals. Now, it's going to look odd. It's not going to look like a CR, if you know what that is. It's going to look like, why in God's name did they do that? That's going to look weird. So, bondage of genitals. Bondage of other body parts. You may see that the ankles and the knees are duct taped together or tied together. Maybe their arms are tied behind their back. Maybe they've got a set of toy handcuffs on, or maybe real handcuffs. Maybe they've got ropes fish netted around them and tightened. But somehow or another, they're bondaged up. Now, you might look at this and say, well, now is this a homicide, right? Someone's tied them up and strung them in the closet. Maybe that's your job to determine and look at all the scene features. But you may very likely see someone in a partially nude or nude situation that's got some bondage that is a sexual play. Other masochistic behaviors, such as cigarette burns or putting alligator clips on their ears or their nipples or other areas of their body that to us would be very painful, and it's painful for them too, but the pain causes sexual pleasure. Again, think suicide. If I'm going to die by suicide and I've decided to string this rope up in this closet, I'm probably not going to take the time to take my shirt off and put alligator clips on my nipples and tie things to my genitals and then go kill myself. That's probably not going to happen. Protective padding on your neck. One investigator showed me a case one time where a woman died by suicide and had a protective pad on her neck. And they ruled it suicide and told me all the reasons why, and I kind of have to agree with him, but I've never seen it. The only time I've ever seen a protective padding on the neck is when I could prove that it was an autoerotic incident. The reason why it occurs is because someone has participated in this activity more than once, and they have left a mark on their neck, and either they've seen it or other people have seen it, and they realize they can't have them marks. So they'll put something around their neck if they're addicted to the ligature strangulation form, so that they don't leave a mark, a towel, a scarf, something like that. So if you see that, I would certainly be thinking more autoerotic than suicide. And then evidence of repeat behavior. If the ligature looks like it's been tied to this banister or this rafter or this closet rod often or continuously, and there's marks on there and it looks like that's been used continuously, maybe there's a kit of items that the person uses for insertion or for electrocution, and it looks like those are repeat behaviors, then you may think more along the lines of autoerotic than suicide. Now, some of the scenes you go to are going to be what I would consider very obvious. They're very sexually oriented. You've got a lot of scene features, and it's very obvious that it's an autoerotic accident. And if that's the case, then you can justify that in your narrative. Then it needs to be ruled as an accident and justify the accident as an autoerotic sexual play accident. If it's suicide, then it's suicide. The caution here in this little short training is that there are times that we go to cases that might be a little bit questionable, and investigators are just ruling it suicide because, the person's hanging in a closet. Well, that might not be suicide. And so there's a lot of things. If you don't get it right, one, you're putting a stigma of suicide on the family. Two, there could be insurance issues. Three, there's investigation things that are not done correctly and questions that aren't answered. So we need to justify if we think this is autoerotic or a suicide. And if it's autoerotic, we need to justify that. So the scene features, again, there's a little bit of crossover maybe, but in most cases, an autoerotic will stand out. Now, if someone is fully clothed in their own home, hanging from a rafter or from a closet rod, then you're probably going to lean towards suicide. Of course, suicide's another whole thing. You got to talk about intent and justification and ideology and all things to rule suicide. But probably it's not going to be autoerotic. Although, like I said, there can be people that can climax without manual stimulation just from the ligature. And maybe the person is fully clothed and maybe they were participating in that activity for that purpose. And in those cases, you may not be able to determine any different. But look for these scene features, and that's going to help you to go a long way toward determining, is this a suicide? Was this voluntary and intentional to cause their death? Or were they involved in some type of sexual play, and they've accidentally died? And these scene features will certainly help you decide on that difference. Hey, if you have not subscribed to the Death Investigator magazine, you need to do that today. This is a free online magazine, comes to your inbox every single month, and it is dedicated to the field of death investigation and all of those supporting roles. Each edition is packed with timely articles, interactive links to videos and audio training, and lots of extra. Articles are written by industry professionals. There's training announcements from various organizations across the country. And best of all, it's focused around our profession and our lives. There's articles in there that not only help you be a better investigator, but there's articles to help you be a better human, to be better in your family, to be better in your finances. This publication is a well-rounded publication that is focused on you. So subscribe today. Go to deathinvestigatormagazine.com and get your first free issue, and then one each month thereafter.